This is part 2 of a 3-part Q&A session I did on my Patreon. So thank you to all the Patreon followers who submitted questions. If you're interested in supporting the website or this channel, there's a link for that in the description. So part 1 was on just general questions. Part 2 today is about practicing and improvement. So questions relating to practicing or improving on your instrument. And then the part 3 will be on technique and articulation questions, which will be the bigger one. Today's there's only 3 questions. So the first question is by Carlos, and he asks, or he says also, thank you for your thoughts on how to approach a piece. Many times I will try to follow the piece you are working through by just sitting with the actual sheet music in front of me and studying it while you are playing through it. However, for many reasons, I'll lose my place unless you identify the specific spot. Is this a good way to not only learn and read music, but also focus on the rhythm? Yes, Carlos, it's a very, very good way to learn a variety of things about music. When I was younger, and I still do it to this day, but I used to go to the library and pick up stacks of scores. So I would pick up like the complete violin and cello works of Bach. I would pick up cantatas by Bach. I would pick up the Bach keyboard works. And I would pick up Beethoven scores and Beethoven symphony scores. I would pick up just any scores I could find of major composers. And then I would also get CDs, and it was before the MP3 times, but it's even easier today with Spotify and things, but I would get the music for it as well. And I would just sit around and I would look at the music while a professional musician plays through it. So I could hear it and see what it looks like on the page. And that is so helpful for a variety of reasons. When you look at a musical passage and notation, it looks very similar for any kind of instrument. But when you hear a violinist play through it, it's going to sound a certain way. They can connect notes very smoothly. Or if you hear someone singing something, the actual legato, like the actual sound connection, is extremely high on voice or string instruments. But then, you hear it on keyboard or piano or harpsichord, and and you hear how they connect notes and how they phrase notes. And what you end up getting is an idea of universal phrasing for music. The idea that although sound can vary, like a violin can play something more legato than a guitar, but in terms of phrasing, you'll get an idea that all these professional musicians of different instruments, like flute, for example, versus guitar or something, they will all phrase with a similar like momentum and direction towards the end of the phrase and have similar shaping. And there's this universal kind of style of phrasing and handling music and articulation that you will learn. And also a lot of variety from different performers on how you might articulate and play Bach, for example. So you gain all this information about how people interpret music notation. But you also get stylistic awareness of how people play Bach. And if you only listen to how guitar players play Bach, that's not good enough. You need to hear vocalists sing Bach. You need to hear harpsichord playing Bach. You need to hear violins and cellos playing Bach. And then you get a sense of how people treat the music and the musical lines. And you make a strong connection to the music notation and what you can do with music notation and how flexible music notation is, and also how strict it can be at times as well. So much musical information you can gain from doing that. And yes, it's also very good for you to be able to follow a score while someone's playing, to feel the beat and to know where they are in the music. And at first you might find it very complicated. If it's a very busy score or an orchestral score, you might get lost. You might wonder like, oh, I never want to be a page turner for someone. But, you get really good at it. And that's really good for your music reading skills as well. Your sight reading skills is to keep a beat and keep following the music. Even if you kind of get lost for a second, you get to see the shapes more clearly as you go. So absolutely keep doing that. But I'll recommend that you do it with a variety of other instruments and composers to build historical awareness and performance practice and performance skills. And also the universal nature of listening to other instruments and how they phrase is just so important for guitar players. Because we tend to be like this little guitar bubble on the side and we listen to lots of guitarists play stuff. But that's not a very good model for our musicality. A great model for our musicality would be to listen to other instruments and use our instrument as a tool for delivering universal, music. Okay. The next question is by Sharon, and she asks, my practice times vary as time allows, and I usually practice from 1 to 2 hours. But I would appreciate guidance on what you would recommend as the minimum practice time for my level. I'll be starting your Classical Guitar Method Volume 2 very soon, so she's in my Volume 1 method. I also have your book, Classical Guitar Technique. How would you add in some of the exercises from that book? Well, the first thing is that, yes, people's practice times vary widely. I usually recommend for my Volume 1 method book that people are able to practice, up to half an hour a day. Ideally 45 minutes maybe as a minimum, but half an hour for some people or kids, like if you can just do a solid half hour of actual practicing, like with the intention of improving. If you can do that, good for you. That'll be enough for when the student comes to the next lesson, they will have improved a little bit so we can talk more about what they're doing. If you're practicing 1 to 2 hours, fantastic. Congratulations. That's great. Just make sure that it's all very good practice time, that you're not drifting off or, we do our best practice when we have high concentration and energy levels. So if you're practicing 1 to 2 hours, take breaks. You can do what I was talking to Carlos about is listen to some music and listen to some scores. That's part of what my whole website is about, is that I play the music that I put out. So there's lots of different ways you could practice without playing the instrument, but make sure when you're actually playing an instrument that you are focused and trying to improve, of course, using all the tips from the site. So, but yeah, it's a huge amount of flexibility depending on the student. But in terms of the classical guitar technique, so at the end of each of my method books, there's a little technique warm-up that usually I just use that with my students. But if you're practicing longer, you're probably hungry for more. So in the classical guitar technique book, I would mainly recommend that you just practice the open string right hand exercises at the beginning. There's 100 open string exercises. You don't have to practice all of them, but you could start going through them. The reading isn't difficult for those, and it's really good to get your right hand just really under control and build up good habits in your right hand so that this hand works more automatically and the left hand can focus on what it's doing more. So until you're more deeply into my Volume 2, you can start looking at more of the exercises from my technique book, but for now I would mainly stick to those open string exercises. The next question is by Tom. Tom asks, I've been really working on and enjoying the process of learning instead of being fixated on achieving musical goals. I do have goals, but the biggest obstacle to my improvement has been frustration due to frequently trying to learn music beyond my level. So how do you recommend balancing contentment with our own limitations and situations versus the drive or ambition to get better and better? That's a really great question, Tom. And I think the first thing I would say, though, is that the idea that you're always going to have limitations and there's always going to be situations. And the idea of ambition to get better and better should not mean playing harder and harder repertoire. Playing harder repertoire should be a natural occurrence of solidifying your skills at the level that you're at, and then you naturally move on and on. But the ambition, you need to direct your ambition towards playing music really well. Like with my method book, my Volume 1 method book even, I tried to make all the pieces like full 1-page pieces, even from their first piece. And they're like open strings, the first pieces. But the reason I did that is that I think that I want my beginner students to play the easiest music, but I want them to play it well, and I want them to play it like it's a full page full piece of music. And because their ambition should be to play music really well, and the the idea of improving is that is improving, and their ambition should be to improve in that way, not to play the huge concert works or stuff beyond their level. The important thing too is that I think guitar players tend to, again, live in this little bubble where we listen to other guitar players and they put out these albums and they have all these difficult works on the albums. But if you listen to, like, especially in early music, for example, a lot of the pieces are quite easy. Like some of the Gaspar Sanz pieces, if you hear an album of like all of Gaspar Sanz works, a lot of those pieces are going to be like grade 3 pieces, but they're played by professionals, and the professionals play them really, really well. And it's hard for some of us to play those grade 3 pieces, even if I'm like at an upper level, to play a grade 3 piece as well as a absolute professional. That's difficult, and my ambition is definitely to just play music well. So you really want to redirect your energy in that way. And that's one of the reasons too that I started the site, is to make a good catalog of music at different levels, and especially seek out excellent music at the, I don't believe in grades, but I know I use the word a lot, but at lower grade levels. Because playing a Gaspar Sanz piece, he didn't write pieces that are just like easy pieces, but some of them happen to be fairly easy to play. So yeah, you want to seek out those excellent pieces of music that just happen to be at the level that you're at, and then get your ambition to play them really musically. And that's how you avoid frustration, and you avoid reaching beyond your level. And then there is no obstacle at all. It's just you and that great piece of music that happens to be at a level that you can technically handle. And of course, make sure you have a balanced practice session that includes technique material to help you overcome and improve your skills as you go. But I think that's the most important thing, and you have to really get that in your brain and really focus it and make sure you're doing that, because that will make your musical journey just so enjoyable, and you can avoid all frustration. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions, and the next batch of questions will be on technique and articulation.